الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Dear brothers and respected sisters, I guess there are two major things going on in this country today. One is that the Facebook is selling its shares, and some people are supposed to be making billions today. And the other thing is that leaders of G8 are meeting in Camp David, and they will be coming over here in an expanded meeting, NATO's meeting right here in Chicago. I guess I don't feel qualified to talk about the Facebook thing. I'm not into investing, and some of you I'm sure there are and excited about it. But what we can talk about is one of the major goals that the NATO meeting has here in the Chicago area. I'm sure they're talking about it in Camp David today also, and that is how to end the Afghanistan war. And that is, if that's what they are discussing, that is a good sign for Muslims that the suffering of people of Afghanistan will finally come to an end. And hopefully it will come to an end in a way that will benefit the people of Afghanistan, and finally their sufferings will be over. Finally they will feel free, and finally they can live according to how they want to live. What has happened in more than 10 years of war over there, and the war was waged primarily by our country, United States, and of course NATO was also pulled into it. So right now it is a war being waged by NATO in Afghanistan, and the stated goal is to end the war in 2014 and then continue supporting the Afghan army after that. So we hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them to end the war soon, earlier than 2014 if it's possible, and end it in a way that will really relieve the people of Afghanistan from all the suffering that they are facing right now, and they have faced for decades, and particularly in this last decade because of the actions of our country, and that's what we need to be concerned about. As to what have been the costs of the war, part of the costs are hidden and part of the costs were apparent. So Brown University has a research center in the name of the President Eisenhower, who was in our recent history was the military general who became the president and who knew both sides of the military establishment as well as the civilian government, and the institute established over there in his name undertook a study to determine the costs of the war, post 9/11 wars that America has waged. What have been the costs? And the study was conducted by more than 20 people, and among them there were economists, were anthropologists, were humanitarian people, and legal people, and even a medical doctor was included in the study. And I'm going to go over some of the findings of the report to bring to everybody's attention as to what have these wars cost us and cost as humanity as such, and what have been the cost to the United States, because if people do not know it, if we do not know it, the politicians would like to do things under the table, thinking that ultimately the cost will be paid by you and me, but they will get away with waging the cost. Now, is the war let me spend a couple minutes to say that war is not forbidden in Islam. So we cannot say that war is forbidden. We know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself waged wars. As a matter of fact, in one of the verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very dramatic way challenges, why don't you fight? In Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما لكم لا تقاتلون في سبيل الله والمستضعفين من الرجال والنساء والولدان الذين يقولون ربنا أخرجنا من هذه القرية الظالم أهلها وجعل لنا من لدنك وليا وجعل لنا من لدنك نصيرا. And how could you refuse to fight? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. How could you refuse to fight in the cause of God and the utterly helpless men and women and children who are crying, O our sustainer, lead us forth to freedom out of this land whose people are oppressors, and raise for us out of thy grace a protector, and raise for us out of thy grace one who will bring us help. So but then Islam has also laid down some rules and regulations of the war. And of course, I want to cover more about what has happened in the past 10 years, but it is relevant to bring the Islamic perspective to the war. So there are Quranic injunctions, there are prophetic sayings, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sayings about the war, and so on. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was the first Khalifa, I'm sure put everything together when he gave instructions to Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, who was heading an army going towards Syria. So these are the instructions he gave. When you travel, do not drive your comrades so much that they get tired on the journey. Do not be angry upon your people and consult them in your affairs. Do justice and keep them away from tyranny and oppression, because a community that engages in tyranny does not prosper, nor do they win victory over their enemies. When you become victorious over your enemies, do not kill their children, old people and women. Do not go even close to their date palms, nor burn their harvest, nor cut their fruit-bearing trees. Do not break the promise once you have made it, and do not break the terms of treaty once you have entered into it. You will meet on your way people in the monasteries, the monks engaged in worship of Allah. Leave them alone and do not disperse them, and let them please themselves, and do not destroy their monasteries, and do not kill them, and may Allah be pleased, may Allah's peace be upon you. So there are rules and regulations and which need to be followed, and we can see if those rules and regulations, how the rules and regulations of today govern the wars today, what have been the effects. So as I said, the Brown University team undertook a study, and I'm going to read part of this thing. What we do know without debate is that the wars begun 10 years ago have been tremendously painful for millions of people in Afghanistan, Iraq and Pakistan and the United States, and economically costly as well. Each additional month and year of war will add to that toll. The Eisenhower Research Center, based at Brown University, assembled a team that includes economists, anthropologists, political scientists, legal experts, and a physician to do this analysis. So they started out by asking some questions. What have been the war's costs in human and economic terms? How have these wars changed the social and political landscape of the United States and the countries where the wars have been waged? What will be the long-term legacy of these conflicts for veterans? And what is the long-term economic effect of these wars likely to be? Were and are their alternatives, less costly and more effective ways to prevent further terror attacks. And one of the objectives they did not study, and I wish they had studied, was what has been America's relations with the Muslim world in light of these wars. So I'm sure we'll run out of time if I start to read it, but the summary of this thing is that people in uniform, whether they are American soldiers, Afghan army people, Iraqi army people, people in uniform, which are supposed to be fighting the war, right? And all those people killed in these wars of 10 plus years have been 31,000 people killed. Civilians who were not part of this war, how many civilians were killed? More than 4 times as many civilians were killed. 138,000 civilians were killed. They were killed by all sides. There were civil wars, people fighting each other, plus American soldiers, American drones bombing the villages, and American soldiers killing on their own. And so the war's toll on the civilian population, which is absolutely no-no, it was 4 times as much as the toll on the people who were fighting them, who were engaged in fighting. So the total, the death toll was more than 250,000 people. But then there are other; these were direct loss of life due to the war. But then there were other loss of life due to the war because of the refugees being displaced. The total number of people in Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan who were displaced from their homes were 7 to 8 million people. And when these people move around, they suffer hardships and so on, and they die because of those things. And the estimate of people indirectly killed because of these wars is 4 times as many as people who were killed by direct effects of the war. That means if 250,000 people were killed by direct effects of the war, another 1,000,000 people were killed through the indirect effects of the war. How about the costs? Well, the costs are estimated to be $3 to $4 trillion. Just to put 4 and add 12 zeros. That will be the cost of the wars, these 10 plus years of wars. Some of these costs have been incurred already, and these costs have been incurred with borrowed money. We did not have the money. The wars were not included in the budget. They were fought, and the money was borrowed, and the Congress kept on raising the debt ceiling and kept borrowing money and kept sending money for war. So $4 trillion, just imagine what $4 trillion could have done, not only for people in America, what could have done for people in Iraq, what could have done for people in Afghanistan, what it could have done in people in Pakistan. But nothing but destruction has been the cause of these things. So there was an analysis done as to how this money, what fraction of the money was spent on how was the money spent. So 25% of the money was spent on hardware. The tanks, the helicopters, the planes, the ammunition, this and that, 25% of the money. So if the direct cost of the war was $1 trillion, $250 billion were spent on hardware. And how much was spent on construction? There was some construction going on in Afghanistan and some construction going on in Iraq after we tried to build something. 4%. 4% of the money was spent on construction. So if anything, any positive thing was done for the people of Iraq or people of Afghanistan or people of Pakistan, that was limited to 4% of the total money spent. So why would you think now the war is coming to an end, inshallah, now there is a debate about who is going to pay for the further cost of supporting the Afghani army. And we know, everybody knows that that cost will be a small fraction of the cost of waging the war. But now the willingness to support that portion of the cost is not there. So that's why the NATO, although it does not have as many people as who will be attending at the McCormick Place here, other countries who are potential donors to support the Afghan army have been invited to so that they can contribute something. So you would wonder why, when the cost is being reduced, why would the countries, NATO countries who were waging the war, why are they reluctant to pay a smaller cost than pay a bigger cost? Well, where does the money go? When $1 trillion is spent on war, it's not like we take $1 trillion and sprinkle it in over Iraq or Afghanistan or Pakistan. The money goes where? To people who are manufacturing helicopters, to people who are manufacturing weapons, people who are manufacturing tanks and Humvees and so on and so forth. Money doesn't go anywhere. It goes to that military industrial complex which is manufacturing all these things, and so that money comes out easily. Okay, but when the money is going overseas to support an army over there, it will be so difficult to. This is not a conspiracy theory, but as I said, President Eisenhower, back in 1951, when he was retiring, or was it 61, when he was retiring, in his farewell address, as I told you before, he was a military general as well as the civilian president. So he knew both sides of the issue. And in his farewell address, he gave a warning. He said, be aware of the military industrial complex, that these people may force upon the country unwarranted wars, and the only defense against this thing will be an informed citizenry who will know that what is going on and who will stop these things from going on. Otherwise, the campaign is underway. And do you know how much the campaign of President Obama will cost and how much the campaign of Mitt Romney will cost? Each of them are expected to spend $1 billion in order to wage the campaign. Where is this money coming from? Who is paying this money? And why are they paying this money? Is this an investment on the part of people who are donating money? What do they expect in return for their investment? And these are the questions. Ordinary people like you and me, we need to be asking these questions. We need to be aware of these things, that wars will be waged and there is a pressure from the military industrial complex to wage these wars, but like President Eisenhower alerted, we the citizenry must be aware and do what we can to stop these wars. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وقال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. O Allah, guide the mankind, guide the humankind to live in peace with each other. O Allah, guide them to stop oppressing each other. O Allah, help the people of Afghanistan, help the people of Iraq, help the people of Pakistan, help the people of Syria, help the people of Egypt and Libya and all the Muslim countries to live with liberty, with dignity and independence. O Allah, help us, help our leaders to realize that everyone has a right to live in liberty and peace. O Allah, guide them and help them to come to a decision which will be good for the United States as well as good for Iraq, good for Afghanistan, and good for Pakistan. O Allah, you provide the guidance, you provide the help that is needed to make the right decisions. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وجعلنا منهم واخذل من قتل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وأكبر.